Right, I'm here with my new friend, Andreas Welsch. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us on the Human Code today. And I just want to jump right in and ask you, what got you interested in the intersection between humanity and technology?
Thank you so much for having me. Look, I've been in the technology space for more than 25 years, and I actually seen that technology is the easy part in any kind of change, in any kind of deployment. But once it's users, once it's humans, it's people that actually need to work with this software, this new piece of software, this change, that's when things get a lot messier, a lot more difficult, because we've seen that we need to pay a lot more attention to that human element because we're also used to doing things in a certain way. So any kind of change feels new and disrupts what we've come to know and what makes us feel comfortable. So human element is absolutely key to any kind of technology transformation or rollout.
Where did your career start in the technology space then?
So I started my career in 2001 in IT actually. And I learned a lot of fundamentals that I feel are now becoming much more relevant, even in all of this AI and automation. In my first role, starting out in my career, I managed software rollouts and OS deployments, operating system deployments, changing from Windows 2000 to XP to Vista to whatever else was the next thing. And what this taught me was that no matter the size of the organization, no matter the number of users that you deploy something to, you really want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, that you've tested things very thoroughly before you roll them out. Because I was also the one getting the calls when something didn't go right on Monday morning or on Tuesday. So now applying a lot of that thinking, a lot of that engineering mindset to AI, to agentic AI is just so exciting because I feel so comfortable with it and I can apply so much that I've learned before. But over the years from IT, I've ventured out um, into different areas. I used to work for a company called SAP that maybe some of you might be familiar with, one of the leading enterprise application vendors on the planet. That's where I spent most of my career. And for the last 10 years that I had been with SAP until 24, I worked in and around the topic of AI and machine learning. So helping large Fortune 100s and 500s figure out what do we do with AI? What is that to begin with? How do we make it useful? How can we use it in our finance department? What can we optimize with this? In really just connecting technology also to business value was so key. And for the last 2 years, I've been independent and I help business leaders kind of figure out the same thing. What should our AI strategy be? What does our roadmap look like? And most of all, how do you bring our people on board now that we have AI or that we're planning on rolling out AI?
When you talk about the idea of bringing AI into the organization, eh, we're seeing reports that basically like 95% of all proof of concepts last year failed in some matter. Like what defines success, or what are you seeing as successful deployments versus unsuccessful?
Maybe if you're listening to this, let me give you a little bit of hope. The strategy, the stat that I tend to gravitate to is one from Gartner. Since 2018, they've said that 85% of projects fail. So not quite as bad as 95. I think the MIT stat was a little self-serving because they have a toolkit that can help you with that. But the right the 85%. Um, the challenge is manifold, right? Leaders are pressured to show innovation. That a lot of times leads to innovation theater. Yes, we're doing something great, and we're looking for all these opportunities. We have all these shiny objects that we need to chase, whether it's machine learning or generative AI or agentic AI. We give people access to these tools, and then we find problems. Well, it's usually a bad way to start because you already have a strategy, you already know where you want to go in your business. So why not start there and think about how can we achieve this faster or more in more cost-effective ways, or how can we create a new business model around what we're doing and the data that we have access to. So a lot of the conversation, is flipped on its head with where it starts. We have a technology, let's go look for a problem. That's a sure way to failure. The other part, again, is not aligning it closely with your business strategy and KPIs or something that you can measure. What does it mean if we implement this? How is this going to materially impact or improve a process? How are we making more money with this? How are we doing things faster, better, cheaper, and what have you? because at the end of the day, you are working with a business stakeholder, and they're the ones asking, well, why should I even do this? How is this going to help me? So you need to start speaking the language of the business, of the business function that you work with.
It's a beautiful place to start, and it's kind of funny. It's like you and I started our careers around the same time, and the main measurement that people were doing on Wall Street was how many clicks or how much site visits you had during the dot-com bubble. And I think that the AI space that we're in right now, we saw that last year in which the investments were going right towards AI. If you had AI anything, you could go, but we've got to be grounding this in the KPIs. We have to be grounding this in, the actual use cases that show the value for the business.
For sure. So look, when I talk to leaders in businesses, they keep telling me, hey, my boss wants to know how many agents we have rolled out, or how many bots or how many AI features we've rolled out. It's meaningless, right?
Yep.
It's meaningless until and unless you can show what is the measurable business impact that you're making. So it doesn't matter if you have 100 agents that just create more work for everyone else, or if you have 10 or 5 or 2, but what they do is so meaningful that it either brings in more money or helps you resolve problems more quickly, what have you. So it's not the quantity, it's really the value that you need to focus on.
Which creates an interesting space. Like, how do you go through the business and identify that value? I think, we kind of see these conversations going on around like, I want to be applying AI. I think, I shared with you some of the things that we do in our own organization. And I feel that that does drive value for us. And I know it drives value for our customers. But like, what is the process that you walk businesses through when they're looking to identify those points?
It takes a couple steps. One is it absolutely needs sponsorship from the top. Without your senior leadership's buy-in, it'll be a very hard sell, and just doing it grassroots probably won't get you as far. On the other side, just having lip service at the top, we need to be AI first. AI is the way to go without following through, meaning without access to tools, without proper training of what can these tools do and how can you use them, is not going to deliver results as well. So you really need to address it and attack it from both the top, have the air cover, the strategic relevance, but at the bottom too, help people understand what does this do, how does this work, because they're in it day in and day out. They know where things break, where they break easily, frequently, what are the manual things we need to do if something is going off the rails or it's not going as expected. So they know where the problems are. It's a matter of empowering them and encouraging them and giving them the skills and knowledge to also think about, well, I remember I attended this training about this tool, and this AI thing can, I don't know, compare documents, or can show me the red lines, or can show differences, or what have you. Maybe that's something I can try out here. And if they're enabled enough, they can try this out themselves. And if it's too complex, they should at least know whom to reach out to. Maybe there's a center of excellence, or there's a very AI savvy person in the organization that they can go to and get more information. But really, approaching it from both sides is really, really critical.
As far as that approaching it from both sides angle, right? Like I'm seeing this in my own organization to where we have basically a fast path for agents and we have kind of like the human path, right? And in some areas, we're finding that even with human in the loop, the human is the one creating the errors and is additionally the one who's kind of like too slow to really see the benefit of like what the speed can be done with AI. And we're having to change the organization to figure out where people should be, where agents should be, and sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. But for the most part, I'm just curious about how you see the AI or how you see AI impacting how organizations are structured.
Right now, I'm seeing more on paper and more in conversations than in a real execution.
Yeah.
And that is because a lot of leaders have withdrawn from sharing information too publicly. Because, hey, if I say we're rolling out agents, my own organization gets worried. Maybe the public, like at large, gets worried that we're replacing people with with AI. So we're taking humans out of that loop and out of that equation and out of the business. So there have been examples where companies have received a lot of backlash when they made these announcements. So there's not too much talk happening right now about how they're changing the organization. Last year in May, Moderna in life science was a good example because they combined their HR and IT functions under HR leadership to say, we want to roll out more AI and more agents. And that means work is changing and it's going to change. And at the end of the day, it's a future of work kind of thing or topic. So HR is the function that knows how we define job descriptions and how we do codes of conduct and training and retraining and how granular roles need to be. So that was their rationale for combining it. I haven't seen a lot of news from Moderna lately how this is going, but I'm sure over the next 6 months, 12 months, we'll hear if it's either been hugely successful or if there have been good learnings that others can adapt as well and can adopt too. So I think this part of the organization, how are we changing it? That's one of the big questions that's looming. Because yes, we see a lot of promise with technology and with agents, but we also know that everyone's role is a little more than just a bag of different tasks that we can farm out to an agent. And I think that's where some of the tension comes in to say, what are tasks that we can confidently delegate to an agent where we are also confident that this agent does what it's supposed to in carrying out the task and delivering high quality results that we need because our work depends on it. And at the same time, where do we need to have people in these roles? Do they become more orchestrators and more reviewers? Or what are tasks that they really need to do themselves? And one more point on this. I think there's a big gap right now in the understanding and the assumption that, hey, we can just stop hiring entry-level people and we give all of that to AI, and then we figure out what we do. So organizations like IBM, for example, have gone down that path in 2023, and their CEO Arvind Krishna publicly said, "Hey, we are reducing our back office staff by 7,800 people, and we'll delegate that to AI." A couple of weeks ago, their CHRO said, "Hey, in the US, we're actually tripling entry-level hiring because we know that we need to build a talent bench. We want to have people in the business that understand our software, our industry, our technology, our customers, so that as they rise through the ranks, we are able to put them into senior roles or leadership roles when those leaders that are there today are going to move out." By the way, it's something that I've written about in my latest book called The Human Agentic AI Edge as well. How do organizations change from a traditional pyramid to a diamond to a kite to maybe even a spear, where you have a few people that lead the organization and that delegate most of the work to AI. So would encourage you to pick that up. It's on Amazon. It's a bestseller on Amazon. It's all about how can we shape the next generation of AI-ready teams.
It's a great lead in. And honestly, I'm glad that you brought up the book because I do want to get into that subject about like how do you structure your team around AI and how do you make the determination for what you're doing? Like, I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he's also in the AI space, in which he was saying he's hiring people that are in their late career or in their very early career, but there's not a lot of mid-career people that he has because the work is and the people in late career, they have to be able to jump in and they want to jump in and use AI in a way that is like demonstrable as
Yeah.
an individual contributor, not just as a team lead, kind of a people leader. So how do you structure these teams? What are the skills that you're looking to develop in your organization?
What remains critical from my point of view is subject matter expertise.
Mhm.
There've been a number of studies that show the more you know about a topic, the easier it will be for you to write good instructions or prompts or define a goal that is aligned with what this agent should actually do and what you would typically do. And the easier it is for you to review the output and judge, does this meet the expectations? Does this meet our bar? Is it above? Is it below? How do we get it from meh to actually really good that we can work with it? And I think that's a lot of the challenge that that organizations are facing today. How do we, on one hand, bring AI to the business so we can enable those that are in senior or in expert level roles to work with AI? That's one thing, but that's a here and now problem. I think the next problem is how do we then decide what is that future skill set that we need? And we know it's human plus AI, but what is that human component? What do you need to know to use AI well in the future, and how do you gain your expertise? There's been these stats that it takes about 100,000 hours for a human to develop real expertise, whether that's after you get your driver's license, 100,000 hours on the road, or yeah, before you're an expert driver, 100,000,
100,000. Well, that's
5 years, if I'm not mistaken, something like
no,
that.
I think it's 10,000 hours.
10,000? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because the typical work year is about 2,000 hours.
Hmm. See, um,
It's a lot, though.
but I can tell you with 100,000 hours, you're 10 times more of an expert than at 10,000. How about that?
Very true.
So I love that because that's the human element in our conversation. So either way, you need to spend a lot of time to get really good at something. And the question is, how do you get really good at something when AI cuts out that bottom and does the legwork for you? If you don't need to research the information, how do you know that what you're presented with is actually accurate and actionable and correct and adequate for your audience? So there we need to develop a lot more of that critical thinking and judgment that I think has been so critical for a long time and that we haven't developed systematically for a long time either.
I, um, I read a quote the other day that basically says the world doesn't need another 10th grader's essay on Shakespeare, but every 10th grader needs to be able to write that essay. And like, because it is that development of those skills around critical thinking, around being able to analyze information that is super critical for us as humans to be developing, even if the tool itself could easily hand that to us. And so I think you're hitting on a major point in any organization today is you've got to find a way to bring up classes of leaders through the ranks because otherwise you don't have that talent pool that IBM is trying to develop.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think my organization and my friends' organizations of hiring young and also senior, look, we've got to figure out what do we do in the middle, right? Like how do people grow through that as well?
Yeah, and I think part of the answer is we cannot just wait until those in the middle become senior or become end of career, right?
No,
So
no.
in the HR world, I've been fortunate while I was in corporate, while I worked for SAP, to participate in a number of talent development programs. One thing that isn't specific to SAP, many large companies do this. It was called a fellowship. So you were able to join a different team for 6 months or 9 months as part of a project and work as a full member of that team. The benefit was to this team that took you on that they got an outside perspective, um, somewhat outside, right? Still within the company, but from a different department. You learned new skills that you could bring back to your department, and this cross pollination was really beneficial for both sides. And 6 months was a good amount of time to get up to speed and learn and contribute, and then bring these learnings back. There are other examples where job shadowing could be a good way. I remember early in my career, I was fortunate to shadow our CIO for a day when he visited the North American headquarters. And it was exciting. I could see so much of what he would do on a typical day: meetings, conversations, discussions, leadership conversations. And that opened up a whole new world to me. And what is it like walking in somebody else's shoes or following somebody else's shadow in that sense? There's job rotation, right? Early in my career, when I started, like I said, in '01, I started in Germany, and something that's pretty common there is called an apprenticeship. Over here in the US, it's more common in the trades. In Europe, it's even for white collar work very popular. And so what that allowed me to do was move around one company's different departments. 3 months in procurement, 3 months in marketing and sales, 3 months in IT, 3 months in HR. So that helped me get a much better understanding for how does a company actually work? What are the different functions? What do they do? What do they care about? In a similar way, I feel we need to bring in similar job rotation, job shadowing, or fellowship opportunities to help our incumbent workers learn more about other parts of the business and be valuable to them, but also bring back the knowledge to the team that sends you there.
What are some of the areas that this is like, let's say the last like 3, 4 years have been most impactful for yourself? I know you've gone independent, you've kind of like stepped out there, you've written a few books. But really, where has the technology touched you the most?
I'd say the most it's touched me is within the last 4 months, roughly. Um, if you thought things were moving quickly in 24 and 25, they've accelerated greatly since OpenClaw came on the map, since agents are self-organizing, since we have things like Cloud Code and Cowork and Computer, and since we're talking about agentic commerce and all of these things, it's crazy and it's really, really hard to keep up. So for me, that means sitting down deliberately and figuring out how do I build my first agent? Now that I have one agent, how do I build the next? What are tasks that I do either regularly that I don't like doing, and I think AI can do, or that I do infrequently, but I'm not adding a lot of value. So um, those were some immediate things to look into, and then obviously learning about the technology, what are different platforms that are available, playing with model parameters, looking at different protocols and what have you. Because there's so much talk and so much hype and so much noise, quite frankly, on social media. Every influencer, every wannabe influencer is saying, breaking news, you need to check this out, and whatever SaaS did, this is that did. But unless you really touch the keyboard and you try this out, you can really talk about it at the surface level at best. So get hands on, try it out. For me, that means picking deliberate tasks that I automate with AI or delegate to an agent.
There is that moment when you first see an AI take over a task from you, do it to completion, and also do it better than you would have done it as well. That is
Yes,
a magic moment that I think everybody should experience. So
for
very,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's a what was that first moment for you, or what are some of the things that you've actually tangibly
Mhm.
given over to an agent
For
to
sure. Yeah.
manage?
So um, simple task. I do a lot of workshops and keynote speaking, and a typical question that I get from my clients is, "Can you send me your headshot and bio?" Now you can get this from my website, but a lot of people still ask, "Can you send this to me?" And usually that meant I would need to, go through my files and put it together and write a nice email and say, here's everything. Let me know if you need anything else. So a couple of weeks ago, I built that agent that monitors my inbox. If I move something into a specific folder, it activates the agent. It looks for my bio, for my media kit, for the session summary, and drafts an email that it puts back in my inbox and sends me a notification. So then I can review it. I'm at that stage where I'm hopeful that it does the right thing, but where I'm not as confident that I would let it send it without a review. And so that helps me save 10 minutes probably every time a request like that comes in, and it's easy enough that I can also show it or demo it, and it's not harmful in any sense, and people get that. Yeah, that's productivity savings.
It's one of the I love those little use cases because they're the things that like we've been doing for years. We kind of just think that it's happenstance that it happens and you go through the motions, you do it, but it's so easy for
Yeah.
the AI just to take that over. So
Yeah. And by the way, any new tool, any new subscription I look for to automate a part of my business, I first of all look, is there an API? Right? So a nice UI is fine. It's fancy, but can I automate this using my stack? I primarily use N8N. Last year, at the beginning of last year, I automated my content workflow or content repurposing workflow. Much like you, I run a podcast too. I've been running it in the 5th year. It's called What's the Buzz? AI in Business. And from a video, I go to an audio, and then I have a transcript that's cleaned up. And that's where everything starts. That's what is the trigger point to summarize the conversation for a newsletter. My readers know if it's a summary, it's AI generated, but there's a video, there's an audio podcast that you can listen to. There's a transcript if you really want to know what exactly the guest said to Andreas and vice versa. You can go there. But if you just want to get the summary, it's perfect. It generates the image using Stability AI. If I have the video, it creates the cuts, the snippets. What else? It creates the social media copy for the promo post. Hey, this episode is coming up. Or also for the snippets. If you missed the episode, here's a key moment. So you want to download it. All of that had previously taken me about 6-7 hours, I would say. Now it takes me 2 minutes and 45 minutes to review. Right?
See, that is the key. We do
So
something similar. Like I'll take the transcript from this and I'll write a blog post from it
yeah.
using our content pipeline as well, because I'm much more apt at having a conversation than I am at sitting down and writing something. But given all the content that we've had, our agent knows how I talk, how I would write if I was actually to sit down and write it. And it takes that pipeline, like you said, from 6-7 hours down to a few minutes with
Yeah.
a bit of review. Um, how how are you? Yeah, I know we've talked about, like, you're talking to business leaders, you're talking to people who are looking to implement AI. Like, who are the primary people that are coming to you, are looking for your advice? Who is it that you want to be talking to as well?
Yeah. Great question. So it's usually business leaders. It's senior leaders in different verticals. I've been talking more to manufacturers lately, especially in Pennsylvania. But open to business for other states too, obviously. And it's leaders who are challenged by their board or by their senior leadership team to figure out AI. My board said I need to do AI. What does it mean? Where do I even start? So it's that sort of advisory on the strategic level. Again, goes to the roadmap, goes to how do we bring this into our business? How do we even prioritize what makes sense? And then how do we bring our people on board? And much of that is actually covered in my first book, the AI Leadership Handbook. Right. So there are two, one and two. And the AI Leadership Handbook is all about how do you bring AI into a business and turn that hype into measurable business outcomes. The thing that gets me excited is being exposed to all these different conversations. I do a lot of work with vendors to learn about what is it that they're actually working on. What is the next thing that's coming, whether it's in identity and security, or it's in integration, or it's other agentic platforms. And that allows me to bring that knowledge and these insights to clients that are asking, what should we do and what's next? And again, these learnings then go into upskilling, into training programs. Based on what I've seen, other leaders ask, here's what you need to know and what should be top of mind for you. And again,
I love
that
it.
becomes the content that you see from me on LinkedIn. So by the way, also don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn.
We will definitely provide a link in the
Yeah.
show notes as well. But
Yeah.
Andreas, I got to say, this has been a fantastic conversation. And one thing that I would just like to leave the audience with is, are there any tips that you have for people looking, out for 5 years, 10 years on what's the horizon?
Focus on the next 2 quarters and you'll have your hands full.
Yeah, that's
Every,
very true.
right?
I think that's a great advice to stay present.
Yeah,
And if we try to predict where it's going, we're probably too far out. So
I think so. Yeah. There's enough movement and enough innovation that'll keep us busy for a long time. But understanding where things roughly going and then what's right in front of us, that's my big advice.
it's a fair point. Once again, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate having you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.